You ever watch a team built around one player and realize mid-game that every advantage you thought you had depends on a line of people who suddenly forgot their jobs? That's what Monday night felt like for the Buffalo Bills. A primetime unraveling where the guy at the center, Josh Allen, got knocked around so much he might have forgotten he was supposed to be the answer. They came in as 7-3, still dreaming of the kind of late-season run that rewrites narratives. Instead, they left Houston with a 23-19 loss and the kind of bruised confidence that spreads quietly through a locker room. The number that balled everything up? 8. 8 sacks on Josh Allen, a career-high single-game hit for the reigning MVP, and a sentence-long way of saying the offensive line imploded. The first half felt like an odd little parable. On paper, the Bills had their splash plays, a 45-yard touchdown run by James Cook that looked like vintage Buffalo speed, and a 97-yard kickoff return touchdown by Ray Davis that woke everyone up. But stats lie in cuddly ways sometimes. The Texans outgained Buffalo 201-155 in that opening frame. And it wasn't fluke, it was structure. Davis Mills, filling for the injured C.J. Stroud, wasn't pretty, but he was effective enough. He hit a go-ahead touchdown to rookie Jaden Higgins with 5 seconds left in the half, and suddenly the scoreboard read 2016 Houston at intermission. It wasn't sexy. It was efficient. And it was the kind of efficiency that makes quarterbacks uncomfortable as the clock winds down. You could feel the texture of the second half before anyone said it out loud. The Texans' defense was going to force the Bills to play small, to grind, to punt, to hope. Houston came in leading the league in points and yards allowed, and they were playing up to that billing. Pressure became the theme, and pressure doesn't have a plan B. It just gets nastier. The Texans turned what could have been a messy shootout into an old-fashioned trench match, and the Bills' trenches, tonight, were full of holes. There were a handful of plays that explain everything. After a short pass to Khalil Shakir, Buffalo turned the ball over on a forced fumble that became a Texans field goal. That sequence flipped momentum and temperament. Later, on 4th and 1 in Texans territory, Buffalo handed the ball to Cook and watched him get hit 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage. A play that made guys on the bench slam helmets and ask practically with their mouths, "What are we doing?" Allen's reaction, slamming his helmet in frustration, told you this was about more than one bad play. It was about a rhythm gone missing and an offensive line that couldn't hold a pocket together. Allen's stat line, 24 of 34 for 253 yards, 2 interceptions, doesn't capture the mechanical indignity of the night. He got sacked 8 times. For a quarterback known for extending plays and making something out of nothing, that's not just numbers. It's a strip mining of his advantages. Each sack ruins timing, chips confidence, and shrinks the window where a veteran can improvise magic. Against this Texans front, Allen kept trying to make the improbable possible, but night after night, play after play, Houston's D answered with run-stopping, pocket-crushing execution. And yet, as messy as it was, the Bills nearly found a way to stay alive in the most ridiculous, cinematic way possible. Down late on 4th and 27, Josh Palmer caught a pass and pulled off hook and ladder that picked up 44 yards. Sudden theater, mid-heckle. For a second, the game looked salvageable. A few plays later, a false start pushed them back. Then Allen, after digging to the sideline and feeding the clock, threw an interception on 4th and 6. That's how the night ended. A dizzying moment of hope turned into the exact thing you dread when your line has been collapsing all night, an unforgiving turnover. So what does this mean for Buffalo? First, it means the season's narrative cracks a little wider. They started 4-0 and have been 3-4 since. Flashes of dominance, then a long series of questions. The dream of a sparkling postseason run depends on more than Josh Allen heroics. It depends on frontline fundamentals. You don't win championships on talent alone. You win them with depth, with a line that buys 9/10 of a second and a run game that takes the heat off the quarterback. When those things fail, even a superstar becomes human. Second, it means Houston's defense deserves a hat tip. They've been quietly excellent all season, and they turned in one of those performances where discipline and pressure combine into a weapon. 8 sacks on a quarterback like Allen aren't luck. their film study, schematics, and the kind of physicality that makes offenses uncomfortable for a whole week. Even without Stroud, the Texans looked like a team that win the kind of ugly, necessary games that decide playoff seeding. Third, and more painfully, this is an alarm bell for the Bills' coaching staff and front office. You can survive one rough night. You can survive a fluke injury or a short-term matchup problem. But when the same structural problems, inconsistent run blocking, line play that lets rushers flip to the quarterback, show up in prime time against a solid opponent, they stop being a one-off and start being a trend. If you want Josh Allen to be the centerpiece of a deep playoff run, you protect him first and put him in positions where his strengths, arm, mobility, creativity matter more than his need to fight for every second. There's also the human side. Terrell Bernard and Maxwell Hairston left the game with injuries, which thin an already tired roster. Injuries compound pressure. Rotation depth matters, especially when the playoffs loom and everyone else's margin of error narrows. And then there's the odd theater of the hook and ladder. That play was the kind of desperation beauty football sometimes serves up: messy, brilliant, and ultimately insufficient. It says two things at once. This team refuses to quit, and sometimes refusing isn't enough if the fundamentals aren't there to support the heart. So where does Buffalo go from here? They go back into the lab. They rewatch the tape. They adjust protections. They hunt for the guard who can anchor a rushing lane or the backup who can stabilize a rotation. They remind themselves that star power alone doesn't win rings. Trench warfare does. For Josh Allen, it's a restatement of a lifelong truth. He's elite, but he still needs help. For the Bills, it's a reminder that championship plans are written in the less glamorous pages: line calls, slide protections, habit reps in the offseason that make this kind of night unlikely. For Houston, it's a heartbeat forward result, a win without your starter done by defense and gamesmanship. For the Texans, this is fuel. They'll play with confidence now, knowing their front can set the tone against anyone. And for the NFL moment itself, games like this are the sport's honest currency. They show you whose preparation matters, whose depth cracks under stress, and how quickly hope can be whittled down to grit. Tonight, the Bills learned a hard lesson. You can have the flashiest player in the room, but if the room around him collapses, the flash dims fast. If you remember one image from this game, let it be this: Josh Allen, flushed and furious, slamming his helmet not out of melodrama, but because he knows the truth everyone can feel in the bones. You win from the inside out. And when the inside crumbles, the brightest light in the building has to do more than shine. He has to survive. You ever watch a great season start to wobble and think, somebody flipped the script? Thursday night felt exactly like that. A Bills team that started 4-0 getting shoved back into reality by a Texans defense that treated Josh Allen like a linebacker on a lunch break. 8 sacks, 2 interceptions, 1 heart-stopping hook and ladder that almost brought the house down, and a 23-19 loss that raises more questions than answers for Buffalo. Reuters from the jump, Houston looked less like the backup quarterback squad and more like a blueprint for chaos. Davis Mills, filling in for the sidelined C.J. Stroud, didn't need to be spectacular. He just needed to be steady, avoid turnovers, and let his defense do the dirty work. That's exactly what happened. Mills threw 2 touchdowns. The Texans' defensive line kept breathing down Allen's neck all night, and the scoreboard told the story. Houston Chronicle. Let's talk about the pressure, because numbers will never fully capture the feel of it. 8 sacks, 70 yards lost, multiple hits that appeared to rattle Allen's mechanics. For a QB who built his career on extending plays and punishing defenses for overcommitting, this was an old-fashioned neutralization. The Texans didn't just beat him. They put him in a box where his best trait became a liability. NFL.com, Buffalo's first half actually had flashes. A 45-yard James Cook touchdown run and a 97-yard kickoff return by Ray Davis that briefly made the night feel like classic Bills theater. But the other half of the ledger read turnovers and missed chances, a Bills interception that turned into points for Houston, injuries to key defenders, and a series of offensive plays that came up short when it mattered most. Football is a game of swings. The Texans' defensive surge created the momentum swing that carried them home. Reuters now. Here's the bit that will make coaches sweat. Those late sacks. Allen's last drive was a study in compressed hope. Quick throws moved the chains. Then, two consecutive sacks turned a manageable situation into a 3rd and 20, then 3rd and long again, and finally an interception that iced the game. You could feel the stadium tilt with each hit. The Bills engineered an improbable 4th and 27 hook and ladder that picked up 44 yards, a play that should have been the cinematic moment, and instead it became the prelude to the final, heartbreaking misfire. ESPN.com, let's zoom in on what this means for Allen and the offensive line. The O-line has been criticized before, but this performance was a full-blown implosion. Whether it's missed assignments, busted protections, or schematics that failed to adjust to Houston's pressure packages, the result is the same. Allen could not get comfortable. And when your MVP caliber quarterback isn't comfortable, your whole offense starts playing defense. That's why the line's play is the real story here. Not just the sacks, but the way pressure ruined timing, routes, and confidence. ESPN.com credit where it's due. Houston's defense is legit. Will Anderson Jr., Danielle Hunter, and the rest of that front turned up like they were auditioning for a highlight film. They forced 3 turnovers, 2 interceptions sealed by Callan Bullock, and a forced fumble recovery that flipped field position at the right times. This wasn't fluke performance. It was an